Hey everybody, it's Keelin. Welcome back to this week's edition of Razzball Ambulance Chasers. This is, as promised, your AL East preview, and I have another guest. I have Matt Frank here. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you? Thanks for
Good.
having me.
Yeah, I love your Blue Jays shirt. I meant to tell you it complements your eyes beautifully.
Thanks.
I was like, wow. Um, well, yeah, I would love it if you would share, what you do with Razzball. I'm sure people have been seeing you all over the place and will continue to.
Yeah, so like a couple of years ago, I started out doing some DFS for trusts, and then last year, you might remember seeing me as the Sagnoff Steals guy, the other half of the Sagnoff for JKJ there. And this year, he asked if I could take over for Everywhere Blair there for the top 100. So I'm going to start doing that in a couple of weeks. And yeah, coming to see you for some injury stuff here today, and then going to see Mike and Jeremy next week for the AL East as well. And like I said to them, hopefully not too many tears about the Ohtani flub from our Toronto Blue Jays. But other than that, there's some other stuff that I was looking at too. So yeah, happy to share whatever
Yeah,
bits and pieces I can kind of gather up. So yeah.
yeah. Okay, so I'm sorry I had to stop the recording. Um, Along with Matt's various Razzball credentials, and the work he's going to do in 2024, that sounds awesome. There's another reason I wanted to have him on Ambulance Chasers, and that's because last year he had a baseball injury of his own. So he was in his slow pitch baseball league, hit a triple, rounding second base, boom. Something feels wrong, very, very wrong. And here's a picture of the aftermath. As you can see, it looks very wrong. And it ended up being that he tore multiple muscles in his quad and his groin. So he's done well. He's making a recovery. He was a really good sport about letting me share this and letting me kind of joke with him a little bit when this happened. He shared some of his physical therapy exercises, and he reminded me that I made a joke about this one on the top and called it the toot maker. And his most recent update is that he was sharing with his family that he was going to be on Ambulance Chasers and that he might have a little insight into Giancarlo Stanton's various injuries with his groin, anything with his quad, because Matt has obviously had some experience with that now. When he mentioned this, apparently his 7-year-old was a little aghast and said, "Dad, you can't say groin if you're talking to a girl." So I'm sorry, Matt's 7-year-old. He did say groin, and we talked about your dad's groin. I'm very sorry. At the same time, best wishes to your dad's groin. Hope it heals up, no long-term damage. And now he can use that to come join me and talk about Giancarlo Stanton, which we do get to later in the episode. But thanks again, Matt, for letting me share that, and we're glad you're getting better. Yeah, I would love to know how you're feeling with the Ohtani fallout.
I called it on December 1st with a bunch of buddies. I said, "Yep, he'll end up going to the Dodgers," and I had the whole thing listed out. And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, this is gonna happen," and I still fell for it. Yeah, on that
Oh,
whole Friday, I went absolutely bonkers with it. So
it was
um,
heartbreaking.
it was a rough one for sure. But
Yeah.
hey, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, look out! Like if he becomes a two-way All-Star, we're laughing up here. So we'll see. Yeah.
You guys are stacked now. Yeah, no, I
Oh
was I
yeah.
was definitely rooting for you. I was like, wow, maybe he'll do the thing that we won't expect him to do. And I think the Blue Jays are probably my like probably second favorite team. I just like a lot of players you've had. I like going to spring training and watching them. But yeah, so I was like, okay, since the White Sox stink, now's my time to make my transition to the Blue Jays fully. But I'll probably hold off a little bit, even though they still have an awesome team that we're going to talk about a little bit today.
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump in. And it's going to be similar questions for anybody who listened last week. It's going to be similar questions that we talked to Cooley about, just with an AL East focus. So my first kind of question is, who do you think is going to have a comeback from injuries this year?
Okay, so I broke it up into a bunch of different just basically I looked at one guy per team. Um and I mean there's some of it's a little bit of a hope. Some of it is um guys that I think are probably going to flop after a little bit of an injury issue. but I think probably the one that I've hoped for, not to go right back to Toronto, but one of the people I looked at was Danny Jansen. I mean, he's 28 years old, which is right around the prime. I think prime usually is like 26 to 28 um, for your hitters. Uh, just like I wrote down some of the injuries he's had. The strained hamstring in 2021, he missed like 2 months with that. Had a finger issue in 2022 and 70 days on the IL for that one. And then last year,
Wow.
strained groin. Yeah, strained groin last year. And then I don't know if you remember seeing where he broke his finger because he had his hand out in front and took a
Yeah.
foul tip off.
Yeah, that was nasty.
Yeah, and that was 50 games there too. So outside of the strained groin, I mean, they were kind of fluky, and it wasn't something like one of the other guys that I've got down where it's like a back issue that seems like it's going to be recurring, or we didn't see the same kind of like body part over and over again. So I think, I mean, I know with a lot of these guys, you know, too, because you see the same names a lot. If he can stay healthy, I think he's in for a pretty big season. Like this could be the one where when you look back at it after he's all said and done, say, oh yeah, this could be the year where he actually put it all together. They've loved him up here for a long time. Hits the ball hard. Um, I looked it up. He was like sixth among AL starting catchers
Yeah.
in
Wow.
barrels. Yeah, and he can hammer the ball. And I think that in combination with Alejandro Kirk, I think we've seen the best out of him already. Last year, he kind of faded a little bit. And I know that they've done a lot of like flip flopping between catcher and DH with him. The Jays don't have like a legit DH signing yet. There's a lot of smoke about Jorge Soler the last few days. It's kind of heated up, it seems, but
Nice.
nothing like definite yet. I still think they do sign someone. I was thinking it might have been Jock, but I think he signed in Arizona today. And I mean, Cody Bellinger would have been my number one after the Ohtani thing, just to hope to bring a lefty bat in.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they have Jansen slated as the cleanup batter. Um, I mean, as a really late flyer, I think Gray was talking about it in his catcher pod too. In those one catcher leagues, if you really want to wait that long, you can slide him in as a guy that, as long as he's healthy, I think he's going to get the plate appearances.
Yeah.
But he's got an ADP of like 260 now, I think it said. So two catcher leagues, I wouldn't mind going after a guy like that
Yeah.
as a bounce back. But that's when I think like he's got the power, and if he's got the health behind him, I think it's a decent lineup. So he's going to get some good counting stats too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think I remember last year you guys kind of went through a few catchers, so hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah, you won't have to worry about that as much this year.
Oh, yeah, the Gabriel Moreno deal, him
Yeah.
and Lourdes out for Varsho was a big one. So I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're like, why?
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully he can prove that it was a good choice to keep him around. But I think, like I said, I think if he gets the time, I think he can show what he's capable of.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Mhm.
Were there any others sort of that you thought of as like backups or second or third runner-ups, I guess, to Danny Jansen?
So for as far as like injury returns, I had a guy, and I mean this is kind of a cheat because he wasn't even really out for that long, but a guy like Jaron Duran, uh, it
It
was like
counts.
yeah, it was like a torn toe ligament. They said he had
Oh,
surgery on it. I mean, it's funny too because like, come on, it's a toe. You got like 9 other ones. You should be fine, man. But but yeah, like that was a 42-day IL thing. So, but I mean, the year prior to that, there was no issues. I think 2021 he was out for a bit with the dreaded COVID.
yeah.
So nothing like big. He doesn't have that injury tag with him, but a guy like that. And I think I messaged you when we were talking about like some names, and I was like that close to saying Trevor Story. Maybe I'll dive into him a bit. But I didn't. I went with Duran instead because I figured that Story's, I mean, that's a different story altogether. Like he's,
Nice.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
he's but and Duran, I mean, it kind of goes along with the Jansen thing. He's 27. He's
Yeah.
entering prime years. There's not a whole lot of power there, but the sprint speed. I mean, I was all over the steals last year, so a guy like that, 96 percentile sprint speed is I mean, a lot of guys are ceiling, but a guy
Yeah.
like that could, if he's getting that time, um, he's going to put up some pretty sick numbers.
Yeah.
But and again with him, as long as his defense is good, like I know he had some issues out there last year, and the Red Sox have a bunch of guys like they picked up Tyler O'Neill. They've got Masataka Yoshida. They're I think on roster resource they have him slated as a DH for now.
Yeah.
Wilyer Abreu's got to get some time. Um, Rafaela, the kid. So if he starts in the majors, he's got to get time. So that's another four guys right there. I assume Von Grissom plays second base, but I mean, they even in Atlanta talked about him playing the outfield too. So
Yeah. That'll be interesting to see where he lands there for sure.
yeah,
Finally get to,
oh yeah,
I think we'll finally get to see him, but
I would
you know.
imagine. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Um,
that's another guy I thought like from a little bit of a bounce back. So
yeah. I picked Trevor Story as mine.
yeah,
But I went through a few different people. I went through a huge list of all the Yankees just because so many were injured last year.
yeah.
And while I think several of them will bounce back, I don't know how much they'll bounce back. I feel pretty confident Trevor Story will bounce back a decent amount. And I think to your point, one of the reasons I was like, oh yeah, this would be really good is if he can actually get through the whole season and have as many stolen bases as he did, I think in like 2018, 2019, I think like 2021. Like he was 20s or above. So, you know, that'd be nice to see again. And it was, I think, a UCL, so it's not like his speed would be affected. So yeah, I'm interested to see how he does, and I feel pretty good about him, and it feels safe enough.
Yeah.
I almost was thinking about that. I was like, no, this is too much. Thinking about putting like Nestor Cortez or Carlos Rodon. I don't know like what they would return, but it's kind of like they have to be better this year, right? And then I'm like, no, I can't put this curse on them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's it. And then like the give me there is the one that I looked at was Giancarlo Stanton. Like I know in the war room for the last few years, Rudy's always had him like boosted because the power is like absolutely obscene. But
Yeah,
it's like injury after injury and after
yeah,
it was just it's just the poor guy is like he's such a big dude and it's everything's just breaking down. Like
yeah,
he's 34, which is no spring chicken in baseball. Yeah, it's a strain that's a PCL, left hamstring, left quad, Achilles, and left hamstring. Like, hoy, yo, yo. So
yeah,
like, everything's kind of breaking down. I think it's every year except for 2021, it was over 30 days on the IL. So you're missing at least a month in total. Like the barrel percentage is up there and the hard hit percentage is still way up. But I mean, a guy like him, you can even go Aaron Judge too because
yeah,
you can almost pencil him in for 30 or 40 games missed as well. I think there was just the one year where he was like off the charts and he actually played every game, I think it was.
yeah.
But the odds of seeing that again, I don't know. But like you said, like they had so many guys on the IL last year
It's
at any
insane.
given time. Yeah. That was like, okay, you can almost like reach in and be like, okay, I'll take this guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I actually wrote a note for some of these that was like, lots of Yankees.
yeah, yeah. It's like, yeah, you just throw a dart and you're like, okay, well, that guy probably is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
wonder
but
how Rizzo is going to be as well, just because it's like I would assume he would recover, but I mean also age and who knows. Honestly, like with the some of the concussion stuff, it's like, do they fully recover sometimes? It's hard to tell, you know?
yeah, absolutely. There's been some guys I know when on the hockey side, a lot of guys that like if it's bad enough, they've had to kind of pack it in. Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh, that's stinks. That was painful.
Yeah.
This is ambulance chasers, so
Yep.
that's pretty much all we talk about here.
Yeah,
So.
exactly.
Well, I am curious, you know, you've told me some of your comebacks. I am also very curious to know who you're thinking about selling, and it can be specifically because of injury or amount of injuries or seriousness of injuries. Or I think even like you did earlier, where you're like, this only happened this time for not that long, but it still makes me question it. I'd love to know who you're like, no, I'm not going for them. or they shouldn't
So
be as high as they are.
my Baltimore guy, it was like a very much like, oh wait, oh maybe, well, and I kind of hum and hawed back and forth. Old John means business. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and I thought like, wow, like he's back. He had the Tommy John. 2022, April 27, 2022 is the Tommy John. I'm like, okay, perfect. Um, he came back last year, and I'm thinking, okay, I checked the ADP, 274. Like that's way far down. Like, all right, not bad at all. And then I said, do you just looking at like from 2019 all the way through? Let's see what the injury list was, and it was left arm, left arm, left arm, left arm, left
Oh
arm.
no.
Yeah, like left biceps, left shoulder in 2019, only like 26 days. Left shoulder fatigue is 2020, strained left shoulder 2021, and then the Tommy John in 2022. The recovery all of last year, came back in September, but they left him off the ALDS because he had elbow soreness. And I mean, they gave the don't worry, he'll be ready for spring. But I
Yeah.
think that that one's a believe it when I see it type thing. Um,
Yeah.
I'll probably keep him in my mixed home league that I have here because ours is an auction and I have him pretty cheap as far as keeper goes, just because I like him a lot. But and I
Yeah.
forgot that he was a 2019 AL runner-up to Jordan Alvarez for the Rookie of the Year. Yeah,
Yeah.
so he's got. I mean, he came up and was like gangbusters, ready to go. And I mean, if again, it gets back, you know, because it's all these guys are, if they're healthy, if they're
Right.
okay, then and if the price is right, I mean, pretty much anybody.
Yeah.
But and Baltimore, I mean, they definitely win enough games now. They've got enough,
Right.
yeah, offense behind them. But I don't know. 23 innings last year, before he kind of got shut down during the playoffs.
Yeah.
At 274 ADP, there's guys around there that I think I would take instead, especially if it's in the straight draft, just because I don't know if I'm really comfortable going in and rolling the dice on a guy that has that much background on the kind of creaky arm.
Yeah. I really love that you went and looked up his injury history and that it was the left arm over and over again, because I think that's something sometimes that it's easy to ignore. And like I've seen some buzzing about memes already and some excitement around him. But I think that kind of insight that it's like left arm, left arm, left arm, same thing over and over again. It's like it's probably not getting better.
Yeah.
And totally. I also like too that you pointed out that you'll still sometimes pick him up, because I do the same thing.
Yeah. And I'm a sucker for these guys too, usually. The home leagues, I mean, everybody up here is all Blue Jay Mania usually, but
Yeah.
so like you gotta kind of reach for some guys too. But yeah, like a guy like him, like I had him when he first came up too, but I don't know. Like the fastball velo's 91-ish.
Yeah.
So he's not blowing the doors off by any means, but well, oh, there's another one. Uh, but I didn't plan that one out. But
That was good.
and I mean a left-handed pitcher in Camden, you've got that like deep left field now. But I mean, there's some good check boxes, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like I said, if it falls, but there's been enough buzz where I think a lot of people are like, okay, he had Tommy John, he came back, he's got to be good now. They're saying he's good. But he's one of those guys that like for sure spring training, if I see he's throwing, I'll be like, okay, I gotta see like what's the story? Is he leaving
Yeah.
early, or is there anything that's kind of lingering, I guess you'd say, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good call. Yeah. I really love that. I think here I'm going to introduce one that's not my, kind of like you were pointing out, that's like I've been burned by them even though I like them, and I'm sorry to disappoint you that it is Vlad Jr.
Oh yeah.
I've picked him up like the past 3 years, and
Yeah.
I love him as a player and I like him as a person.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just like, I can't do it anymore. And I've seen he's been going quite a bit lower. Like I think he's been in the top 10 usually the first or the last few seasons, and now I think he's like in the 33 or something like that. So, which is like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But I still think I'm gonna finally think outside of the box this year and maybe try someone else.
Mhm.
Because I'm always like, it's gonna happen.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. On the pod next week with Mike and Jeremy, they want to know where I'm going with thumbs
Yeah.
up or thumbs down, and he might be a thumbs up for me. I don't know.
Sneak
Uh,
preview.
a little
I
sneak.
love those. I love those. Like, that was one good thing about their pod being on it, is like there were some spicy opinions
Yeah,
sometimes.
but it's a zig and zag right now with a guy like that, right? Or there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that are kind of like, well, I'd rather go with a Matt Olson earlier, or I'd rather, even some people are like, oh, Pete Alonso's showing he can hammer like 40 plus pretty consistently, even though his average was pretty atrocious last year. But my big thing, and I'll talk about it after too, but he's so young still.
That's
Um,
true. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think he's like 23 or 24.
Yeah.
And both he and Beaton's best buddy there, Bo Bichette,
Boba Fett is amazing. I
they're
do
the
love
two
him.
of them. Like I think Vlad's 24 and Bo's 25, something like that. They're like a
Yeah.
year apart. They've got this year, and then 2025 is their last year under contract because they haven't signed extensions, either one of them.
Yeah.
So and I mean, this might just be me playing the shirt here, but I'm
Valid.
I almost think that like they're young, they've got that potential still ahead of them. They came up as like superstar. They've got the pedigree, they've got the DNA, if you want to talk about it too. And the two of them are like, you would think that, I mean, not that these guys can turn it on and off, but if they're headed towards free agency, they probably want to try and crank it up a bit more. But yeah, like you said, like definitely disappointing, both of them, especially for where they were being drafted last year, the two of them.
Yeah, I think that was so. I mean, this year I feel like it corrected a little bit. And I hope this is one of those, like, I want them to perform well. I
Mhm,
think it was the kind of chronic knee injury for Vlad last year.
mhm.
Definitely don't want that to happen. And I think, didn't he have his finger injury, which
I
that
think
was
so.
just fluky, as you
Yeah.
said. So yeah, I think it's just the knee I'm a little worried about. But I mean, if it came down to it, I would probably still pick him up. But I'm not gonna go like out the gate like I have on him in the past. I often get Boba Fett as well.
Yeah, yeah. But those top two, like the first two rounds, it's I think a lot of people say, especially when it comes to like the ambulance chaser stuff, you want those guys that have the track record that can put up the numbers. You don't have to worry. If it's a freak injury, it's a freak injury. But
Yeah,
but those guys that have proven they can stay on the field and produce, yeah, big time.
yeah,
I know you've never heard this before, but it has been reported he is in the best shape of his life. So
that's amazing.
we'll see.
I would love to see it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I love
yeah,
that. Yeah, and
yeah,
I think it was only his like out of very like how many 4 or 5 seasons, it was only his second worst one. So even with
yeah.
that, it wasn't even his worst performance, which is pretty good.
Yeah, that COVID season where they played in some minor league parks and stuff, he kind of popped off, and there was a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, it's probably just because it was in like different parks," and yeah, like absolutely, that probably had something to do with it. But like I said, I'm still holding out hope that that something will happen sooner than later. And he's still on the right side of that 26 to 28 kind of pocket there that you want to hope for. Like your top peak stats. So I'm
Yeah,
hoping, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think my other pick that was a little, less. I don't know if it was less controversial by any means, but a little more grounded. I feel like is um this kind of will probably seem like a dud to some people, but also I've read conflicting things. I am also not down with Kenley Jansen. I think that's another one I've gotten him in the past, and same kind of things happened. Um, I think he's older
Hmm.
and he's coming off a pretty rough season, and even though I love his background story and how he's gotten where he's gotten to. I know he had some like trouble last season with some of his heart stuff.
Yeah.
So I hate that. And again, would love to see him bounce back, but I think I'm a little skittish about him. And that's one of those two where it's like your health is way more important in this game.
Yeah.
So giving him that space as well, outside of this thing that at the end of the day is not that important.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen
And I,
he's going at like 127, so I'm kind of like, I don't know.
and that's one of those things too, like when you're talking about closers, I know he's proven himself like year after year after year as far as like production goes, but is that someone that you're gonna be taken high enough where it's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna take him when other people in front of me are taking him. Same kind of thing with Gray and the starting pitchers, right? Like I'm not gonna get those top guys because I'm not comfortable taking them where other people are more comfortable kind of taking them earlier than I would be, right?
Yeah,
And I have Jansen in that AL only pool that I've been in since 1991.
yeah. Wow, nice.
That's a long time.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. Good
Yeah.
commitment.
I missed a few years in the late 90s. They called them the hazy late 90s, but then came back in the 2000s. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So like I've got him in there, and it's like we've combined saves and holds in that league, so it makes those guys even less valuable. So a guy like him, with all everything that you said about like the heart issues and things like that, it's like he's a guy where I mean, if he's not feeling well and things aren't going well, then he could end up packing it in at his age anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's a good call to kind of say, and they have some decent weapons out there in the bullpen too. So I mean,
yeah, they
there's
do.
a lot of yeah, a lot of shifty volatility there. I think, despite the proven track record, yeah, I think that's a good call too.
Yeah, I know. I feel like started going Red Sox heavy, which I did not expect, but I didn't even notice, and I was like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. Cool, yeah. So I guess did you have any more that you kind of had as backups or
My
not
my
backups?
my only other one, and it pains me to say it because I mean I'm almost like I like the Jays as my like main if I have to pick. I'm a baseball fan number one, but I always say if I have to pick one, it's the Jays because I remember like as a kid we listened to them on the radio and everything all the way back. That's my you can see my Dave Steve painting in the back there.
Yeah,
He's an
that's
old
awesome.
school. uh, but Tampa, I mean, I hate to even say it, but Brandon Lowe, yeah,
Oh wow, yeah.
he's got an ADP of 271. Um, he had that big year in 2021 where I mean the 39 homers, the 99 RBIs, 97 runs scored, it filled it up. But I know I remember back when he had his first problem with the back was 2022, right after that big year, and I remember reading Gray the one preview, and he's like, I won't go back in on someone that's got back issues. And I'm like, he'll be fine. And sure enough, it was the same thing. Like 2022, 86 days with back injuries, arm injuries. And then last year he missed another 40 with a lower back problem and fractured patella too. So I mean
Ooh,
it just
yeah,
doesn't
that's a lot.
that even sounds bad. Yeah.
Yeah,
But like the swing's great. But lingering back injuries, that's pretty much the worst one you can have, I
yeah,
think, outside of anything like heart related, like you said about Kenley. But yeah, I just said there's so many. Again, it's so many like X's on the page. The
yeah,
back, it's tough to see him ever topping that 2021 output. You've got the Kevin Cash tinkering, and even with some of those middle infielders gone to like Bruhan's gone to Miami now. So I mean that's less. Not that he's going to need competition to worry about, but there's a lot of guys that coming up that they want to get time in for too. So
yeah, yeah. That's a good one. That I think he's one. I had him in that 2021 season. I think just
mhm,
I did. It was one of those picks where I was like, yeah, great, this sounds good, and
yeah,
it worked out super well. And then yeah, it is pretty painful, kind of just like waiting, like okay, it's gonna happen again, right? And yeah, back injury stuff is serious because I do remember he like kept popping up over and over again,
mhm.
which was a killer for them. So
Oh yeah, because he was one of those core guys, and like
yeah,
and it was like I watched a lot of Tampa games a couple of years ago. It was him, and I was a big Nate Lowe guy too. Trust him though. I
yeah.
think I wrote him up every single time I could in DFS stuff. But like Brandon Lau's 29 now, so
Oh wow.
he's edging closer to the magic 30. So again, if back injuries, I can tell you as someone who's a little bit older, injuries like that, they don't get better. So
Yeah,
you think that like
can't
I
wait.
don't think he's going to magically find the fountain of youth. So that's when I
Yeah,
would steer clear of. Again, it's not like he's going in the top 100 or anything, but even down at 271, there's guys in that pocket I'd probably take Danny Jansen over him if I didn't have a catcher yet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that Tampa Bay team is pretty injury riddled in general. So, I mean, I don't follow them too closely, so I don't know if it's like a luck or I don't know what's going on down there, but
mhm.
I think last season and the season before that it was just like what is happening?
Yeah.
It was just rough to watch because it will be just like pretty much a ton of their starters will be out. So yeah. Yeah, that's a
And
good call out.
and he shifts so many people around that it just gets frustrating too. So
Yeah.
go with those guys that you know have like the everyday playing time if you
Yeah.
want to avoid the headache, I would say. But yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, for mine, I think we're moving on to the next question. So I guess kind of getting to the point where we wrap up here, are there
Mhm.
any sort of like alternatives that you've discovered throughout last season or ones you're looking forward to in this season that maybe you used as a that either were injured and you're going to bring them back maybe a little later rounds or that you kind of discovered to replace other injured players?
So this one's a little bit of a cheat too.
That's all right. I
If I
love
can
it.
if I can find it here. Well, I could probably just roll with it because I don't. It's in here somewhere. But it's my AL Cy Young pick for us last year did not quite deliver, and that's the guy who's on the back of my shirt here, number 6, Alek Manoah.
Oh, yeah, nice.
And we'll say the injury was a bruised ego, I think, but
Beautiful.
but uh, but yeah, like I mean, it turned out to be a conditioning thing to a degree. I think the pitch clock had something to do with it. There was more than a little bit of whispering about maturity because I think his nose was a little bit out of joint when he got sent down there. Um, yeah, so hopefully, I mean, I don't know how much people mature over 3 or 4 months, but yeah, so that's an issue too. He got the don't worry, everything's good. He'll be our 5th starter from Ross Atkins as the GM. Um, and they said that he wasn't available. I mean, I'm sure that probably has something to do with whatever trade value he doesn't have anymore after he kind of tanked last year. He finished 3rd in Cy Young voting the year before, so I get that you don't want to try and sell him at his lowest point. But a couple of the guys that I saw as potential, like just in case, I think they probably roll him out for 4 starts. If he blows the doors off, then yeah, hey, look, we made the right call. We didn't move him. If he doesn't, I like Nate Pearson still. I know they moved him to bullpen. He's had weird luck with injury stuff too. Like he had mono last year and just bizarro injury time. Still throws hard. And then they went out and signed this Cuban kid too, Yariel Rodriguez. I know he's more of a reliever, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had someone like him kind of stretch out a little bit for the first month or so, and then you've got kind of both Rodriguez and Pearson as like you can have them in the bullpen, or if you want them to spot start, or if you want them to kind of take over if Manoah entirely implodes, then I mean I think that's a good way that they could kind of hedge both sides of it. So that's what I would say as far as like possible move arounds, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think injured ego definitely counts.
Yeah.
I know not everybody's big on the like mental health psychological aspects of being on the IL, but obviously players are on it for that. And
Mhm.
even if maybe we're being hyperbolic, maybe we're not. I feel like that's absolutely a real thing that could play
Mhm.
into and probably does play into his performance. So definitely good to consider. But yeah, awesome. Well, I think that kind of wraps us up. I'd love for you to remind people where they can find you at Rasball, and then also your socials. You're fun to interact with there.
Yeah, yeah, thanks again for having me. Like this is awesome. Thanks so much
Yeah,
for
it's
like
fun, very fun.
for shooting out the invite. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm at the old Twitter X or whatever you want to call it. Elon's beast over there. Yeah. At MarmosDad, MarmosDad. It's yeah. So I'm over there. Same thing over at Rasball. I think it's probably going to be the same schedule as Trust had last year for the top 100. So it's looking like Mondays, I think. So yeah, I'll be there, and yeah, that's pretty much it for now. And I'll pop up on a couple of these, and yeah, if anyone wants to hear about what kind of Blue Jay madness there is floating around, I know a little bit about a little bit, I think, but
I love Blue Jay madness. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens. I mean, obviously the Ohtani thing sucked, but
yeah, big time, yeah.
yeah, I'm excited to see what kind of happens this year, especially with the knowledge you've bestowed upon us
Hey,
today.
thanks. Yeah. Hey, every day gets closer to no more snow and a little bit warmer. So like we're
It's true.
creeping towards the loveliest day of February, which is spring training,
Yes,
pitchers and
so
catchers.
close.
So let's go. Yeah.
Yeah, so close. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we will see you next week. I don't know which preview we're going to do next week, but you'll find out soon. Bye.